Well, hello, 2013 summer students of ISDS2000 Business Statistics. Hard to believe, but our 10 weeks are rapidly coming to a close. You know this if you have been looking at the college calendar, been following our class schedule, looking at the due dates on the assignments in Connect, and looking at your calendar and pause. We are rapidly approaching the end, and as you look back, you've accomplished a lot if you've been doing each of those homework assignments, completing each of those exams, doing well on all this, then you have really worked hard and you deserve a pat on your back. Almost. We haven't quite crossed the finish line. So let's talk about what remains. At this point in the semester, students are often interested in their grades. What are my grades? How can I determine my grades? And I think we've talked a little bit about that on some handouts that I've given you. But since the beginning, if you go into pause, if you click on the grades link from within our course, you're going to see all your grades listed here. I've been asking you to kind of verify the accuracy of those. A couple tips I want to point out to you to help you as you look at this. Notice that there are subcategories here. This is a common, I guess, distraction to students. It's a way of organizing the information for you, but when you start now looking at the points, there's two mistakes that students make. One is that they'll count this 3 times. In other words, you only had 2 attendance quizzes, so you'll see this is a subtotal and then 2 individual line items. You don't want to say I had 3 quizzes, 20 points, 10 points, and 10 points. You only had 2, right? So only look at those individual line items. Another thing that you want to do is totally ignore, this is the second mistake, totally ignore the subtotals, because the subtotals do not take into account the rules of the syllabus that we're going to talk about next. For example, if you have a drop grade, that subtotal is not smart enough to know that, and so it's going to add up your lowest score, even though that score would be dropped. What about minimum homework score requirements? Well, that's not going to be taken into account in these subtotals, and so, avoid those subtotals. Look at the individual line items. Even then, you need to be looking at the syllabus. So let's talk about that next. Go into pause, go to the very top in the content area, pull back up that syllabus, because when you read it at the beginning of the semester, your focus was probably more on what am I going to have to do. Now your focus is more on how do I do the points, how do I come up with a grade now that I've done all this work, right? So you got to use that syllabus as you calculate your grade. The way that the points are applied is really explained in the syllabus. Minimum grades, for example, on your homework may mean that you have less points than you think. Remember, in the beginning we were saying unlimited attempts on homework. Only grades of 85% or higher will count, and I only counted the highest score, right? And you said, gosh, this is a great deal. Well, if you stopped working on that homework when you had a 7 out of 10 homework points, well, I wrote down 7 out of 10 in that grade book on the previous page because that was your highest score. Now we're going to apply the rules of the syllabus. And so what is 7 out of 10? Unfortunately, it's 0 points, right? Now, as you look ahead, as well as you look back on your homework, there are no homework drop grades. So you may be looking at the final exam and saying, I'm in a good position, and maybe you feel that the final exam is going to be your drop grade. If so, yay for you. That's an excellent thing. But you still have to do the homework for all the chapters, okay, because there are no homework drop grades. So what you may want to do is go back, I would say look at all the pages of the syllabus, but here on page 11, this is where I go through in detail how the assignments are scored and things like that. You may want to just read through that one more time. Just make sure that you remember, especially if you're taking more than one class, how the rules work in this particular class. For example, there's our minimum score of 85%. I've been reminding you about that throughout the semester. Here are 2 examples of how those grades, so like I said, just kind of familiarize yourself with this again. I think that will be beneficial. Again, talking about the syllabus, maybe flip back a few pages to page number 9. Here's a section, how do I calculate my grade? And I give you this example with Anna Apple and all this. And this is just to say to you, to try to make it easier for you, I weight everything using points. For example, your homework is 10 points, but exams are 50 points, right? So maybe in some of your other classes they do weighted percentages, weighted means, which you certainly understand from our studies throughout this semester in statistics. However, you don't have to go through all that in our class. Just add up the points that you earned, including your extra credit, add up the points that were possible or that were required. You were not required to do extra credit, so you don't have to add extra credit points. Required points on the bottom, points that you earned, including extra credit, on the top. Divide, you're going to come up with a decimal value, multiply by 100, that's your grade, right? So that's explained in the syllabus, around about page 9. Might be a good time to look at week 10, the last week of the semester. You have, again, in pause, in the content up at the top. Hopefully you've been following this all semester, but might be a good time to say, what do I have to do? And one thing I really want to point out to you is, as we recap these last, 2 chapters, and notice I'm saying I'm asking you to be familiar with chapter 12. As you look through this and you look at the comprehensive final exam, the starting and closing window for those exams is different than the norm, and that's because we're falling into the final exam week of classes, right? So we're trying to wrap things up and the semester is ending, so I'm not covering, normally we do a Friday to Sunday type thing. That's not the case here, so put that on your calendar. Boy, I would sure hate for you to miss this exam simply because you weren't paying attention to that schedule. Right now, down here at the bottom, more details will be given in pause under the exam number 5 comprehensive final category nearer the time of the test. And so this is your last set of test instructions, and it kind of gives you a chance to see it. Look at how far you have come. My goodness, you have knocked out a lot of material. And so you can collapse all these things, unless up here you can go back and get the syllabus and the schedule and all that. But down here towards the bottom, exam number 5 comprehensive final, these are your instructions. Oops, thought I had those up, but let me just go back. I'll leave those to you. Obviously, that's where the exam get back here. The exam password is going to be. You're going to have one attempt. It is comprehensive, but to get all that information, you want to make sure that you read those comprehensive final instructions. Okay. Now, your grades for the previous exam, exam number 4, have been posted. Verify, look for accuracy, right? Make sure that I transcribed them correctly. I try very hard to be accurate. This semester, unfortunately, and I can't believe it, I made a mistake. One of your classmates brought that to my attention and I corrected it right away. Sometimes I make individual mistakes, so double check. This is your paycheck. This is what it's all about. So make sure that you're looking at those grades when I email you to let you know that they're posted. I've explained this already, but you do have one exam drop grade. Could that be your final exam? Well, it could be if you feel that you're in that good of a position. Even if you're in a good position, why not take it? Sometimes you can improve your grade. It's certainly not going to hurt you if you were planning to skip it. If you were going to skip it, then that means you get a 0. Right? Hopefully that's your lowest grade. If it's not your lowest grade, if you missed another exam, you may need to do well on this final exam, the comprehensive final. You say, but I'm not sure, right? Well, if you have any doubts, you need to take that exam and then you need to do well on it, right? Okay, as you look at your points in the grade book in pause, as we discussed, I'm caught up with all the grading, so if there's anything missing out there, you need to bring it to my attention. Now that's true for anything where the assignment due date has passed. If it's still open, then you have some time. For example, if you have not yet completed the evaluation for the course, you can earn bonus points by doing that, and the instructions are all out there in the pause drop box, so I would encourage you to do that. Numbers are nice when we ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, what did you think about this class? But people choose numbers on a lot of based on a lot of different reasons. And it's hard to really understand why somebody may have picked a 4 or a 3 or a 5. I've heard people give all kinds of reasons. Somebody will say, oh, that person was the greatest teacher ever, but I never give a 5. I never give a perfect score. Yeah, that's, it's okay. It's your prerogative. But it doesn't help me to understand how the class could be improved. And I use student feedback all the time. Now, let's be real. You say it was hard. Well, I know it was hard, and I certainly do what I can, but that's not as constructive of feedback, right? So your comments are really welcome. If you can say something, maybe videos were really helpful for you. Maybe you would have done something different, or hey, share those ideas. I like to hear from you, and your comments are welcome. So I appreciate that. With that being said, get to work. Chapter 11, Chapter 12, and then, really think about that final exam. For quite a few of us, there is no wiggle room on that final exam, and you need to show up and do very well on it. You're in the homing stretch. Push hard. You've invested into this class. Don't relax before you cross the finish line. I know you can do it. Thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you soon, okay?